Mark, man, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for coming on the show, brother.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the show today. I'm excited.
It's awesome. As someone that is kind of so passionate about everything strength sports, I think it's about time to have you on the show. You know, you've made such an incredible boom through multiple points of your life in strength sports, kind of transforming yourself, coming from the incredibly successful strong powerlifter that you were to the incredible kind of freak of nature conditioned athlete that you are now, even at the age that you are. I think you speak to a lot of people throughout the strength sport. So I'm interested to kind of to hop into kind of your general evolution. So going from where you started, obviously blowing up, being a big, strong, thick motherfucker, picking up, pushing strong, big weights. How did you find the climb to success, and then when you realized that you had to leave that? Because I've spoken to Andy Bolton about this before, and he's kind of said, he stayed in the game a little bit too long. He realized that he probably should have kind of got out a bit earlier, and that he was a bit stupid about things. And his kind of progression to kind of being a little bit more functional after he left the game. Obviously, he had a few health issues, dropping that weight, and the kind of the progression for a lot of great athletes. I feel like they blow up, they get huge, they get fucking strong, they break records, and then it's a case of okay, got to start stripping away some of that vile fat. So how did you find that, and how did you cope with it?
Luckily for me, I got kicked out of the sport, so that was a really good thing. I did 1,085 squat. I successfully did 1,080 squat, and then the next competition that I was preparing for, I felt ready to squat around 11:15 or so. I had a really good training cycle, and my body weight was a little like quote unquote lowish. I was about 290, and the weight class is 308, 308 pound weight class. So you can weigh, anything under 308 and you're good to go, and you're in that weight class and you're not considered a super heavyweight. So as I was getting ready for the competition, it was about 2 weeks out, and I was like, man, I better like eat up to my weight class. So I just got like really big and bloated, and then by the time I got to the competition, I was like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man trying to stuff myself into my squat suit. I successfully blew up my first attempt squat, which was like I think it was like 1,000, or it was like 980 or 990 or something like that. Just smashed it. It was super smooth, super easy, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a awesome day. But as I went back to kind of like the warm up area, my I started kind of losing some feeling in my leg. I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be. I only did one attempt, and like my leg is kind of falling asleep. Which some of these things happened when you were in powerlifting gear back in the day, and you have to be really cautious on how long you were in your knee wraps and things of that nature. And so anyway, then the leg just kind of got worse and worse as we went through the flight. In a powerlifting meet, sometimes could be 15 minutes before you hop up there again, especially in the old days when they had the powerlifting gear. It's like it took a while for each guy to set up when he had a gram
Yeah,
and stuff like that. So anyway, I went to go up for my attempt, and my leg was just feeling really numb, but I was like,
fuck it.
this has happened in training before. It's not a big deal. And as I went down, I kind of just lost like my proprioception of that leg. It was like, if you're taking a dump for too long, if you're on your
Yeah,
phone, and you're messing around on your phone while you're on the toilet and your legs fall asleep, it was like that. And so my legs were not really under me. And one leg kind of shot inward, the other leg kind of shot outward, and I got propelled into the front of the monolift, which later ended up making for some good video where I did
yeah,
the
man.
fuck your elbow video uh, type of stuff. But yeah, so that changed things for me a lot. I don't, I haven't really spoke about it a ton, but like I was really really messed up for months.
What being the worst part of that, the psychological or the physical?
Um, it was probably a combination of the two. The physical was really really bad. Like, and I am too stubborn, so I didn't like ever. I never went to a doctor or anything like that.
Oh
I just
fuck.
Yeah, I just stayed at home and licked my wounds. But I didn't, I don't think I really broke anything. I went to I went to a friend of mine who does like acupuncture and stuff, and he was like, "What are they going to show you? You know, you'll get your X-ray or MRI." He's like, "It's just going to tell you that you're messed up." He's like, "You already know you're messed up. You've been messed up for years." He's like, "And you're not going to compare it to." He goes and compare it to what? Compare it to your good leg or compare it to, some x-rays or MRIs of years past. And he's like, you don't have any of that information. He's like, so it doesn't matter. And he's like, you probably didn't break anything. And I was like, all right, good. But yeah, the whole thing was tough to come back from. And then I always felt like I was going to fall when I was squatting. Like just like still to this day, if I get a heavy weight on there, I kind of always feel like I'm pitching forward, like I'm going to lose the weight either forward or backward, or like just don't have the greatest balance when it comes to that kind of thing for whatever reason.
Yeah, man.
And once that happened, it messed me up, physically and mentally. But I did get back in the gym.
How long
I
did it
got back
take?
walking. I wasn't like retired. It took me like about a year to be able to uh, move around weight again and stuff like that. But I was never as strong as I was. I was never as like it was. I was just so hungry for it. When but before I fell, I was so hungry for it. And then, when something like that happens, it makes you kind of rethink things a little bit. And I just wasn't as hungry for it, to be totally honest. I just wasn't. It wasn't the only thing that I had either. I also had Sling Shot. I had a business going. I have kids, and it made me kind of realize like I kind of thought, as many lifters do. I know you do strongmen and stuff too. As many people know, you get so caught up in it that you think that's all you have, you know. And I clearly didn't just have powerlifting. I had a wife, I had a family, I had a gym, I had a team, I had all these other things, and I had a business to attend to. So when that happened, I kind of turned around and looked, and there were all those things kind of waiting for me. Like, yeah, we've been waiting for you. So so here we go. And then that was able to, from there. The transition was easy because I had other things to concentrate on. I had other things to be good at, and then I was also on a mission to get jacked and tan, to get in good shape, and to still be able to put up good numbers. And so from there, I made it a point to like come back and actually do a powerlifting meet, because I was like, you can't go out like a chump. That doesn't make any sense. So I did a full power meet, raw, with just knee wraps. Did a 1901 total, nothing earth shattering. Really struggled with my squat on that particular day, but yeah, I came back into the sport and then played around with some bench competitions here and there, and benched, my best raw bench is 578, and that's kind of some of the more modern stuff that people have probably seen of me. I've tore my pec with
Yeah.
600 pounds and tore my pec many many times, but anyway, yeah, I kind of got pushed out of the sport, and then even just more recently, um, I've been very thankful that I've moved on because of how strong people are right now. You know, I did a deadlift. This is like a couple months ago. I pulled 500. I want to say I pulled like 495 pounds, and I did a couple sets of three, and it was feeling really good. And the bar was whipping around, and like I'm feeling like a stud. And I'm just about to like post it. Like I go on Instagram and about to post it, and there's Steffi Cohen doing like a set of seven with 505. I'm like, this isn't worth the shit. I'm like, I'm not posting this anymore.
Yeah, it's hard when you're comparing yourself to the fucking strongest motherfuckers on the face of the earth, man. It's everything makes you feel weak. You know what I'm saying?
Wow, it's amazing how strong some of the people are out there right now, and I think the shift happened with frequency. I think when I was coming through, we didn't know about frequency. Most people did stuff about once a week, maybe twice a week. Maybe somebody would do like a speed bench on one day and a heavy bench on another. But now you see a lot of the younger guys and girls doing kind of light, medium, heavy 3 times a week,
Yeah.
and they're able to get great results from that. But I don't see people lasting as long as they used to with some of those methods. I
Why
think
do you think that is? What do you think is not giving them that same longevity? Are their bodies just not conditioned to that heavy fucking ass weight that you need to have?
it's too stressful. I think it's the same as trying to always lose weight. I have so
It's
many
hard.
friends. Anybody that I know that counts their macros, that's counting their calories, they're all on the same exact diet. All these, especially from like a guy standpoint. The girls I don't know as much about, but like every guy, it's like you can pinpoint their exact macronutrient count, their exact calorie count, because they're all on the same plan. They're all like having around 2,000 calories a day,
Yeah.
but they exercise their faces off all the time. And you're like, you're not giving yourself enough nutrients to really ever grow or expand. And so I think from a lifting perspective, I think people are just beating the crap out of themselves a little too much. This quarantine should be a good lesson for everybody to see how overtrained they've been. I mean, your sleep can really change. Your sleep can really improve a lot.
Yeah.
People train so much they have like sexual dysfunction. I mean, it's just the list goes on, and we're accepting of some of these things because we're like, oh, it's just I've had lifters tell me like, man, I hate getting ready for a meet because I'm just like pissing blood for the last like couple weeks. I'm like, well,
What the
why
fuck?
are you pissing? Why are you pissing blood? First of all, secondly, why are you accepting of this? Like, why don't you not do the meet and like see, figure out what the hell's going on? The blood shooting out of the nose. I've seen blood coming out of people's ears. I've seen blood coming out of people's eyes. You just get accepting of these things are gonna, you're gonna be real like destructive to yourself. But I think the frequency. I think if you can get your body to get used to that frequency, if you can train more often and be in shape enough to recover from those workouts, I think you're really onto something. And I see Steffi Cohen's been doing it for a long time. I'm not really aware of any, and her husband too, Hayden. I'm not really aware of any like injuries that they've had. I think they've both gotten banged up here or there, but
Yeah.
they seem to be doing great. And then their hybrid training that they have for people, I think is working very, very well. So I just think it's just maybe some people are just pushing too hard. They're competing too often. But I think the frequency is the big difference maker. I think it is the thing that helped a lot of these young people jump past what we were able to do years ago.
Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing now. I think you can probably relate to this. Is it's like people are. I think people are competing a hell of a lot more because I feel like people are just trying to put themselves out there. A lot of people are relying on their meet results to bring in incomes via new training clients, using all those sweet professional shots for all that sexy Instagram content and shit. And people are losing track of what the fuck they're actually doing it for. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well, if you are truly sat there and you're like, okay, I want to be the strongest I can be and maximize my potential, then why the fuck are you doing 6 powerlifting meets in a year? You would do one powerlifting meet and you would put everything into that, right? So I think it's that case now. It's people now need to make the realization of, okay, do I want to have longevity in this sport and do I want to get the most out of it, or am I in this for the short run, the quick fame on the gram, hitting those big numbers, making the money while I can, and then invariably in 10 years' time, you're going to be like, hey, you remember that guy? And you're like, oh yeah, what the fuck happened to him, man?
All right. It's interesting though, because you can do a lot, without competing as well, especially now. Like for a while there, Larry Wheels didn't compete for a few years, and then all of a sudden he came back and like he had this crazy total, and no one even. It was weird, man. I went to the Arnold this year, and obviously because of COVID and everything, things were just way different. But Larry Wheels did like a 2,300 something pound raw total. He benched like 620. He pulled like mid eights. He squatted mid eights, I think. I mean, he went crazy. It was just this crazy competition. I mean, he did so well. He broke the all-time world record. He's a multiple world record holder. No one even cared, and like he was like sitting in the crowd, like watching the other lifters, like in between, like him breaking this all-time world record. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, this is so weird. I'm like, there would be so many people gathered around to like watch this, if it was normal circumstances. But, a guy like that, he's done really well even without competing. I know he started out competing when he was young, but he probably went like a 3 or 4 year period without competing. He was just doing stuff on Instagram, taking pictures with camels and shit like that, and doing kind of like some weird feats of strength and things of that nature, and probably making a good living for himself, which I think is pretty cool. But I think people have to also understand and realize, like, there's only one Larry Wheels. Like there's
Not
only
everyone's
one
a
guy.
genetic freak.
Yeah, he's an anomaly, right? He's different than the rest of us. But I think people see that and they're like, he's always lean, he's always jacked, he's always strong. Like I want to do that, and it's like, well, for most people, you have to kind of pick and choose whether you're going to like bulk, be strong for a while. You might even have to take a couple years. It might even be wise for someone to take 3 4 years, really work on building, really work on bulking, maybe work on, if you're doing strongman, you're working on that static strength for a while, because that deadlift is such a key component to what's going on nowadays. And so, like, maybe you're just working on a couple things, but it takes a long time to acquire some of these traits and
Dude, a
to
hell of a
get
long
really
time.
good in sports.
Yeah, and it's that whole thing, and I think you're again someone that can speak brilliantly on this, and I've spoken to a few people. It's that whole kind of like trial and error mentality of it's like it sucks shit, but there's no other way, and it's so humbling because it's like the people that are still here, like the people like you that are the cornerstones of the industry, is that you're here and you've had the longevity that you've had because you've done everything, man. You've done the 10 by 10s, you've done the GVT, you've done the conjugate, you've done the fucking Shaco, you've done everything, and you know what works for you, and then you take all those best bits, and then it just means that you can continue doing your shit for way, way, way longer. But the vast majority of the people don't want to put in that time. They want a cookie cutter program, they want to be told what to do, and they want to expect that they're going to feel incredible, they're going to have perfect performance, optimal recovery, health, and it's like, dude, you got to get some skin in the game. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I've been very fortunate. Like, I'm still able to do all the exercises. I'm still able to do. There's not really. I mean, if you were like, hey, do like a handstand push up or something like that, I've never even tried one. So like I don't know, that probably wouldn't go very well. I can't do like a backflip or something like that. But like most of the exercises I've been able to do from the time I was a kid, I still have full access to. I can still do them all. I can still go in there and squat, bench, deadlift. If I felt like coming out of retirement for powerlifting, I could do that. I just don't feel like I feel like at my height and for me to exhibit my best amount of strength, I need to be quite a bit heavier than I am right now, and I don't want to really mess with that anymore. Um, but I think so I think sometimes people think of like power lifters. They just think like you can only do it for so long. But I think I'll be doing it on and off. I think the rest of my life. I look at guys like Matt Wenning. Look at Chris Duffin. Chris Duffin really pushed the envelope too, right? I mean, squatting 1,000 pounds for multiple, I think 3 reps.
Yeah.
Deadlifting 900 pounds, and like maybe he deadlifted 1,000 pounds. Yeah, I think he did 1,000 pounds in deadlift too. But I mean, you can do this sport safely and you can do it for a long time. It's just probably very difficult to it's very difficult to be so like meticulous and so militant about it for so long. Like usually that consumes a lot of energy for most people. There's a couple guys that have been kind of doing it for 20, 30 years. I basically competed for about 25 years from the time I was, pretty young. And and luckily for me, I did have some injuries along the way. I tore a pec, I tore a tricep, I tore a bicep. But I have like a little bit of tendonitis in my knee, a little bit of tendonitis in my elbow. My hip bugs me sometimes when I squat. It's like I got nothing to complain about. I'm able to do, if I want to go and do a CrossFit workout, I can do it. If I want to do strongman stuff, I can do it. The one thing that does kind of bug me is it's pretty difficult for me to do certain strongman movements because of my bicep, because I tore the bicep and never had it repaired, and it's just kind of like iffy, I guess is the only way I can
Is
explain
it
it.
just
But
like a partial tear, or did it
yeah,
fully
yeah,
roll up, or what?
right, yeah, it didn't fully roll up. So if I go to do like a
You
stone
just
or
get
something
that.
like that, yeah, it gives that little electrical pull where I'm
Yeah,
like, am I
dude.
gonna blow this thing off all the way? So
Yeah.
that's the only thing that kind of annoys me, because I'd love to do a little bit more strongman stuff.
Yeah, man, it's a very very interesting, just such a multifaceted sport that I think demands so much physically, which is why I just love it. There's just so many different areas to excel in. I'm interested to get into it. Obviously, you mentioned those injuries there, and again, like for a powerlifter, for like people that do this sort of shit, like that's just it's so standard. I mean, I've tore my pec in half. I've done my posterior cruciate ligament. I've done my meniscus. Like I did most of this shit before I was 18 because I played sports to an elite level, and like this shit just happens. You know what I'm saying? But what do you think has given you the capability to not have the crazy tendonitis, the frozen shoulder, the busted hip? What do you think that you've done differently that I think a lot of people in your position would maybe have those injuries? And man, I know people that have had injuries way less than that. And it's like they disappear off the face of the earth and they can never touch a weight again because they're too scared or they don't have the confidence.
I think everything is knowledge based. This is something good for your listeners to hold on to. All problems, any problem that you can possibly think of, can be solved just with one thing, just with more knowledge. So can somebody deadlift 1,100 pounds? We've seen two people do it now. It's a matter of knowledge. For Eddie Hall, he had to go to like a certain deep, dark place to be able to elicit that strength and have that strength come out of his body. For Hafthor Bjornsson, he's a bigger person, and he just had to get the right training together. He had to have the correct knowledge of his training. So here we got Eddie Hall. He had to figure out, how can I tap into to be able to maximize my strength the absolute best. And so he had to go to a sports therapist, and he had to learn how he was going to make this come out of himself. For Thor, he has multiple coaches. He's got a strength coach. He also has Stan Efferding helping him with his nutrition, helping him with his sleep, his recovery, and those things. And so for him, he needed to gain more knowledge. These guys need to know that if you're going to do that shit to yourself, if you're going to lift like that, and you're going to, the human body, there's a lot of give and take, and so if you're going to take from the human body, you better give back to it a lot. Oh, yeah. And if you listen to, like, I had Eddie Hall on the podcast recently, and Thor, and both guys talked about how they did stuff all day long for hours on end, where you're like, holy shit, like this is some wild stuff. I think it was Thor who said he does hot, cold contrast back and forth. He does it for an hour every day. Like that, he does that for 1 hour every day. He gets massage for 1 hour every day. He's probably training strongman training takes forever to do, especially if you're doing like events or something. He probably trains for like 3. You start to stack up that amount of hours and those amount of things, and it's really overwhelming. But I think the key to anyone being able to do this stuff and enjoy it for a long period of time is just simply gaining more knowledge and understanding. You hear people say, "Oh, you got to listen to your body." Well, listening to your body is probably some really bad advice, because we're going to lie to ourselves. I'm going to be like, "Hey, man, how you feeling?" And you'll be like, "I'm good, man. What do you want to do?" And meanwhile, you're like kind of holding your back. You're like, "I hope it doesn't say deadlift," and I'm holding my knee, saying, "I hope it doesn't say squat." And then we're both, we both try to screw each other over, so we end up squatting and deadlifting, right? But like, asking your body and asking yourself how you feel is decent on paper, but you'd have to really be in tune with what's going on, and that's where you can benefit from having a training partner. That's where you can benefit from having a coach. Your training partner will say, they'll watch you do something in training, and they'll be like, "You okay, dude? Like, what's like?"
Yeah, you're squatting like shit. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm not trying to cut you down, but that does not look good. Like, what? Yeah. And they can see the faces you're making, and if you're doing that with like 2 plates and you're trying to squat 4 plates for the day, everyone in the room knows it's going to be like kind of a rough go of it, right? So I just think it's knowledge, and I think the people that are listening to this that are maybe newer to the sport or newer to strength training, just realize it just takes a really long time. It just takes a really long time. It takes like a decent effort and maybe 3 years or 5 years to be good at something. You can kind of just
devoting a good time to it as well. Like, that's just not willy-nilly. Like, you've got to fucking work at it, right?
Yeah. You have to work at it. it doesn't have to be your whole life, but to be pretty good at something, you can kind of just you can do it for 3 to 5 years, um, and it doesn't have to consume every hour of your day. But if you want to be great at something, then it's going to take every single thing that you have. And for each person, it's different. Like if you're gifted, like they ask Bones Jones, they say, "Hey man, how do you do strikes like that?" And he's like, "I watched YouTube," and then he like walks away. People are like, "What the fuck?" People have been trying to, people have been learning these moves and doing Taekwondo and Tai Chi and karate and all these different boxing and kickboxing for years and years and years, and they don't know how to do any of the stuff that he knows how to do. He happens to be really talented, so he can get there a lot faster. For most people, it's going to take an enormous effort. And I hope a lot of people out there watching The Last Dance, the story on the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan that's on ESPN, because that gives you, even if you don't like basketball, that gives you a vantage point of you want to be. Not only did he want to be great, he wanted to clearly be the greatest. If you want to clearly be the greatest, you're going to have to be a complete lunatic. You're going to have to operate on a different level than everybody
You have
else.
to go to a dark place, man. There's no other way. And it's that thing, isn't it? It's those people that are willing to do that. You know, they are 1 in 100,000, and those people, the 1 in 100,000. You know, out of five of those people, one of those people are only going to make it to the top, and the other three, you know, might get 75% of the way there, and they fucking twist their ankle on the court and they bust it, and that's their Achilles gone, and they never play again. And it's like, okay, slap in the face, back to reality, motherfucker. Like, you got to find something else to do now. And like, I think that's one thing that's really interesting about like just like the sports industry in general. Like, I grew up, I played rugby to a high standard. I trialed for England a couple of times, busted my knee, got taken out of the academy, didn't get picked up by England. And it's like, okay, that's just how the system works. And it's like, I think, again, once, like yourself, myself, once you've taken those losses and you've been slapped in the face, and it's like, okay, everything that you thought you knew, like you with your powerlifting, it's like, okay, taken away overnight. And you're like, okay, right, man, now I've got to like reinvent myself and find out what I'm going to do next. And I think it's that interesting thing. And again, coming back around to, you know, so many freaking life lessons that I think that the gym teaches you is that it's you have to put in work and you have to be consistent. And again, I think you are the epitome of those two things: consistent to a fault, and just always wanting to work hard and better yourself. And I'm interested to get into to obviously you wake up early, you're crazy religious about your routine. At what age did this start? Like, what were you always like this? Were you super lazy and you're like, man, I gotta sort this shit out? Like, how did that come to part?
I think I've ended up with a decent combination of being lazy and being very hardworking, because there was periods of time, when I was just a normal like kid, like when I was a teenager, I played a lot of video games with my friends and stuff like that, and so I had a lot of leisure time. But I also was always like in a sport. I was always in like football, or I did track. I did boxing for a few years. I was always pretty active, and so as I got more drawn to those things, as I got more drawn to sports and athletics, I started to try to figure out like how to be better at those sports. So like when I was playing football, I remember like when we would run, like just like the first day, like we would just like run around the field, which was, the field's 100 yards or whatever, with the end zone maybe 120 yards, and didn't run very far. We ran around twice, and I'm like 11 or 12, and I'm like dying. But I liked football, and I was kind of a big kid, so we did that like every day, every day for practice. It's how we like warmed up or whatever. And I never really progressed, like during the year, I didn't progress in terms of like getting in shape, because it was like too hard for me almost. Um, I did well. I played, I started and stuff like that, but I wasn't very good, but I liked football a lot. So the next year I was like, that's not happening to me again. Like when we go and run, like I want that to at least feel halfway easy. Like I saw a lot of other kids, they're like sprinting it, they're having fun, they're laughing, and here's me like I'm like
Blown
holding
out
my
your ass.
yeah, I'm holding my side and I'm like dying, you know. So yeah, I started to learn that, you know, it would be smart to try to have. That's when I was like, oh, I'll go out for track because in track they're probably going to make us run anyway. And so I've always found that to be useful too. Like, what if you can partner up with somebody, or if you can get involved in something organized to where you're kind of forced to do something. Like, I think you're better off. You know, people are in the gym and they have headphones on. It's like the one rule at super training: you can't have headphones on because I'd rather have you train with somebody else. I'd rather have you
Okay.
come into the gym and you have this plan that you're going to do a 5 by 5, right? But you're going to be off in the corner and like doing it yourself. Like, I think it'd be more effective even if I took you out of your workout. I think if we train together, it'd be a lot more effective. So that's kind of my, you know,
I
some
love
of my
that.
process. But getting into the routines deeper and stuff started probably when I started doing some boxing. I was getting into boxing, and like same thing again, like, you know, you're throwing punches, you're hitting the bag, and you can't breathe worth of crap, you know. And I was boxing after school, and then so I was like, well, I'll just wake up early and I'll just run, you know. So I would wake up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and I would go and run. And I was a huge Mike Tyson fan, and
Yeah.
I saw he used to wake up at like 3:30 in the morning and go run. And he talked about how the other guy is not doing it. He's like, that's all the satisfaction I need. I just know the other guy's not doing it. And I was like, wow. So like you know, it wasn't like I did that every day for years on end or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I did mess with that. I remember years ago as well. Um, this is actually probably even younger. I'm probably like 13 or so. And my brother's telling me about how the Bulgarians trained. My oldest brother's telling me about the Bulgarians, how they trained. And he shows me this like manual or whatever. And they work out 3 times a day. So I'm like, I can't work out 3 times a day. I'm like, I got school, you know? And he's like, yeah, but he goes, you can work out in the morning before school and you can work out after school. I was like, oh, it's perfect. And the summer was coming up. The summer was coming up, so I'm like, I'll do this like Bulgarian training, like
Fuck.
all through the summer. So really, for me, it wasn't about. I think sometimes people maybe get confused and they think, man, that guy's so dedicated. For me, it was just like that's what I was interested in. I was really into it, and especially back then, there was never a time because it was me just like going into our own basement. We had our own weights and stuff.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
dad. My dad actually ended up getting us. I don't know how he knew like what to get or whatever, but he got us like a squat rack. He got us like real weights. I mean, and we had a cool. We didn't have anything fancy. We didn't have a lot of stuff, but we had a barbell. We had Olympic plates. It was everything you needed to do bench squat and deadlift and to do some curls and get
Perfect.
and get
Get those
jacked.
beach muscles, baby.
Yeah, so I was in there all the time, and I would say another thing that helped me a lot with my discipline is the fact that half of our basement, when I grew up in New York, half of our basement was my dad's tax practice, and the other half of it was our weight room. And so like I kind of saw like business and lifting like always going together because they were like literally right next to each other. So I would get done working out, I would get done lifting, and then I would pop over into my dad's like office, and my dad would say, hey, let me show you some of this stuff. And he'd show me stuff on his computer, and he'd be like, hey, I did taxes for this guy, and he would show me like all this money that he made. He'd show me like cash, you know, he'd show me like checks. He'd be like, while you were in there like messing around with weights, you know, he'd always call it, oh, while you're in there screwing around, he's like, I'm in here making money. But like while I was doing that, he like literally made like, you know, 300 or $500. And as a kid, when you see that kind of money, you're like, oh my God. So I always kind of put those two things together.
I love that, and again, I think this is it's so fucking interesting, man. Because you just look at people from the outside, and you're like, okay, there's something's happened there, something's different, and it just makes so much sense. You're so passionate about both of those individual aspects that you like. I just knew at some point in time that had to be a part of it, and it makes so much sense. So I'm interested to kind of get to know it. Obviously, you're an incredible businessman. You've obviously had great success. Obviously, from the sound of things, that was kind of instilled from you at a very young age by your father. So I'm interested to kind of to hear prior to the birth of the Sling Shot, How many ideas did you have about various different other accessories, things? How many flops did you have? How many times did you have to eat shit before you finally got the right product? And how was that journey?
Yeah, I've had a lot of different ideas over the years. I know, like, I'd be lifting and I would think like, oh man, it'd be cool if someone made this, and I would always say like, it'd be cool if someone made that. It'd be cool, and then I was like, well, why do I always say that? Like, why don't maybe I should make something myself, like, have the initiative to, like, to make it. And, the times that we're in, and this is 10 years, 12 years ago or so. Um, I went to like a Starbucks. I had my iPhone, and I had an iPad, and I would just, like, I don't know, research stuff. I'd go on like Powerlifting Watch and like see where people are in their with their lifts and stuff like that. But I also just very simply, like, did a Google search and would look at different equipment and different stuff, and I was just like fascinated by it, and I always wanted to, like, try to get more equipment for the gym or stuff like that, but I didn't even have any money at the time, so I would just like look at it at like daydreaming almost. But this before the slingshot, I didn't really have an invention that I really tried to do anything with. Um, the slingshot, like the story of the slingshot is the story of the slingshot. I didn't really have a lot of I didn't have a lot of back and forth with the manufacturer. I didn't have a lot of failures with it. I started very, very slow. And I'm also very lucky because my wife went to business school, and so my wife and then my wife has some business experience as well, even before we started this business. So she was the one, like, hey, if we're gonna do this, let's do it slow. Let's, like, not have too much money out. Like, let's. And so the first investment of slingshots, I want to say it was like about $800, which to us at
Wow.
the time was a lot. To
So
us
what
at the time,
time is this? What's the
this
year?
is yeah, this is just about 12 years ago or so.
Okay, okay. So yeah, relative amount.
Yeah, and just because we just didn't have much money, so that's why it was a lot to us at the time.
Yeah.
And those slingshots, they were crappy. They were kind of like an ace bandage, and they were. I wanted to make them red because all powerlifters wear black because everybody's fat, and so everyone's trying to look a little bit skinnier, right? And so I made the
Shit.
slingshot red so that it would. I wanted to make it stand out. I wanted to make it be something that people could see across the gym, and then they'd say, "Hey, what's that you're wearing?" And so I made it red, but like the first batch of slingshots would turn your skin red too, and they just like smelled weird, and like it was just a nightmare. So I tried to put them in our washer to try to wash the dye out because
Oh
I
shit.
noticed that
Yeah.
you could put water on it and some of the dye would come out of it. So we put them in the washer, tried to wash a lot of the red out, and they broke our washer.
Oh
They
shit.
got all tangled up around the around the washer, and also that didn't work either. They still turned you red and they were still weird. But I just found a different manufacturer, and then got a slingshot made from there. But I've always been tinkering with stuff. I've always been like messing around with different pieces of powerlifting equipment, knee wraps, knee sleeves, wrist wraps, and I had a whole entire room in this house that we lived in that just had powerlifting gear. So you know how people, like, as they start to powerlift or do strongman for longer and longer, their gym bag gets a lot bigger.
Oh dude, yeah.
Like,
You should see the size of my motherfucker now. It's just insane.
giant, it's like a giant hockey bag, right? It's like just got so much stuff in there, right? And for me, it's like, that exploded into like me having this like room full of just like squat suits and bench
Oh
shirts
wow.
and all this stuff. And so I would kind of just like mess around with the different types of equipment that was in there.
So is this
I'd
very
put
different brands? Are you taking bits of like just different branded things, or is this all stuff that you're getting manufactured and you're like, oh, I like this, I like that. What are you doing?
No, it's all just existing brands. It's like an Inzer bench shirt and a metal squat suit and stuff. And at the time, I was very fortunate to be sponsored by Elite FTS .com and Dave Tate, and so I would have a lot of gear from them, and I would get obsessed about the different wraps and stuff that they had, and I remember like taking a wrap and like trying to wrap it around my knee and then up around my hip and then back down around my knee to try to make like almost like a slingshot for the lower body. And that was even before I ever made the actual slingshot. But I was just like fascinated. I would put a like a wrist wrap or like a knee wrap. I would just like wrap it around like my wrist and then have it go like over my elbow and then down under like my armpit and like just move around with it because I was like, this is freaking cool. It's like it has like every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So like when I went to push, it would like pull you a little bit, or when you went to pull on it, it would push you a little bit. And I was like, wow, this is like just super neat how this works. And I didn't even have the idea for the slingshot at that time. I was just like kind of just playing around with stuff. And then I got injured a bunch of times, tore my pec a bunch of times, and then it was just a matter of me trying to, solve that problem for myself. Like, how do I stop doing this? How do I stop tearing my pec? How do I continue to train and do the things that I love without getting hurt?
So it's almost
And
birthed out of necessity.
absolutely. And then from there, one day I was going to put on a shirt, and I put the shirt over both arms without putting it over my head yet. And I just kind of like moved my arms back, and I'm like, holy shit, I think that would work because that would spot like your elbows, just the way that someone would spot your elbows on like an incline dumbbell bench press or something like that. And so, which is a matter of like trying to figure out how to get it made. And then, anybody that has an idea or a creation, I think that you probably have access to more people than than you really can think than you really think you do.
Yeah.
You have a lot more power than you think you do. Like as we mentioned with Eddie Hall, he had to like harness that, but it was already like inside of him.
Yeah,
A
I
lot.
know Ross actually speaks about it a lot, just kind of tapping into that potential in your brain. It's incredible.
Absolutely, and a lot of us have a lot more potential than we think. And there's like, because I think that somebody might think, oh, like that I grew up wealthy or that I knew somebody or like none of that happened that way really. It was more like just me sitting down and really thinking about it. Like, okay, I have this idea, I have this creation. Okay, I kind of know what I want it to look like, but who do I know that can like sew it together? And the people listening right now, if you're to think about, do you know someone local that's a mechanic? Do you know someone local that can fix your plumbing? Do you know some like these people like or a friend that knows somebody, right? And you can find these people, so you can be really resourceful. And for me, it was I would ask my wife, and she's like, I don't know how to sew anything like that, and she's like, but my friend, so she makes swimsuits for our swim team. My wife's on the swim team. And I was like, oh, cool. I was like, well, I'll talk to her. So I went and met her at a Starbucks, the same Starbucks that I'm like, searching for stuff online at. And I talked to her about this design. She's like, oh, that would be easy. She's like, I have a, industrial sewing machine, so she has this machine. She sews these things together, and she comes back a couple days later with what is now the Slingshot. And when she showed it to me, she's like, here it is. And I was like, well, I was like, do you think it's sturdy? You think it's good? She's like, well, try it out. So I put it on and I moved my arms around a little bit. I'm like, okay, stay right here. I'm like, I'm going to go. I'm like, there's a gym just like a couple hundred feet that way. I'm like, I'm going to go run in there and I'm going to bench press. So I benched 135 for a few reps, and then I benched 225 for a few reps, and the weight was just kind of bouncing off my chest, like slingshotting off my chest. And I was like, holy shit. I'm like, this is awesome. I kind of rack the weights, and as I get up off the bench, I'm just like covered in like goosebumps because I'm like so excited about it. And then from there, it was a matter of like it was like a winning lottery ticket. Now all you got to do is like cash it in, but a little more complicated because I just had to figure out, where to get it made, and then there's a lot of things to think about. There's how to start a business is like having an invention and having a business are two totally separate things. They don't have much to do with each other. Although the inventor may be able to like hustle it a little bit better because they might know why they made it. But that's kind of where your luck runs out as an inventor. So luckily, I invented it, and luckily my wife has the business side down to where she can handle all the stuff of like, how much money we spend on advertising and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm interested to hop into it as well because I think this is again another dynamic that not a lot of people think about. But for you, working with your wife as a business partner, I think that in and of itself is a really interesting dynamic. So how do you guys handle that? Do you guys say like, okay, no fucking business talk after 6 p.m.? Are you guys just constantly on board with each other? Do you find that because you've done it for a little while now, you kind of the signs and signals, and it's like, okay, right, I know when I need to get the fuck out of the room because I've done something wrong and I bought something that I shouldn't have, and I know when everything's going well.
Yeah, yeah. The business stuff, I think, early on we had to not in the very beginning. In the very beginning, it's like we talk about it nonstop,
Yeah,
because it has to be talked about, and we
it's
were both so
passion.
excited about it. Um, but yeah, as time went on, and as like I have a 12-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old son. We're trying to make sure they're okay too. Trying to make sure everything's going good with them and make sure the relationships with them are good. And so, yeah, we did kind of make some rules. We would like maybe like if we were going out to eat, we would just bring like one phone. That way, we just didn't have two phones. Like she would just have her phone. It's in her purse, and the only reason why we brought a phone is just in case there was an emergency with the kids or
Yeah.
something like that, or a babysitter or something need to get a hold of us or whatever. And so, yeah, we'd have some rules like that. And then we would say, like, when we sat down to eat, we'd say, okay, look, because we're not like with each other, nonstop. So we'd say, okay, look, first 15 minutes, let's talk a little bit about like a couple things that I need to say about this new product or whatever,
Just get it on the
that we need to
table.
talk about. Yeah, we get it out, and then we have a couple of drinks and enjoy the rest of the night and don't talk about it again. So a lot of things like that. But what she does is so different than what I do. She's really the actual like boss. Like I don't like, I don't even, I guess if I didn't want to, like, I don't have to communicate with our staff if I chose not to. Like, I don't really need to, but I'm like their friend, I'm their buddy, I'm their mentor, I'm their, so it's different. We have different roles, but she's the one that's like, going to bring the hammer down on anything that needs to uh, really get done. But the dynamic works good because, sometimes she'll say, "Hey, I got this idea," and she'll tell me about like an idea that she has, and I'll just say, "Well, so that idea is crap." It's like she's like stepping into my territory, like stepping into my like
You're like,
my
nope, bang.
yeah, yeah. I'm like, yeah, stay in your lane, lady. And then sometimes I may say something, hey, like, have we tried this or tried? She's like, oh my God. She's like, just get out of here. She'll just say that
So why are you
because
even talking
the
about
person,
this?
yeah, the person that is like working on the various things that we have to work on, it's like you think of everything. Like people have come to me and they're like, hey, have you ever thought about doing this with a slingshot or doing that with a slingshot? It's like, fuck yeah, of course I have. I mean, I think about it day and night. I've been thinking about it for the last 12 years. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, it works out well. We don't really. I guess the only time we have like argued about anything is sometimes just on like how to handle people. Uh, how to handle a customer, how to handle an employee. But I think that's like normal. I think that's very normal in relationships. Period.
Yeah.
How are we going to handle, your dad, drinking too much, or how are we going to handle, like, there. I think those scenarios I think come up a lot in relationships, where you're talking about a family member, and then you just you just have difference of opinion on how to handle that person or how to interact with that person, and then the same things happen when you have a business and when you have employees and stuff like that. But yeah, other than that, I think like we see eye to eye. Well, so something that makes the business effective is that we don't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff, we don't really fight about it, but like
It brings discussion out though, right? Like, because you have those opposing points. It's like, okay, right now I get to see the shit from your side of things, and I can now try and kind of elicit my side of things for you to
yeah.
see.
Yeah, well, you really want to you want as many problems as possible in a business, and I think people don't understand that. You want all the problems to be like conjured up. You want all the problems to be like kicked up so you can get rid of them. Like you learn about them, you fail fast, you get the failing out of the way, just like with lifting. Mess up a bunch of times, hurt yourself a bunch of times. Okay, now I got this new knowledge. Now I can go out and kick some ass, right? And so it's a very similar thing, but because like I'm more, she might say, hey, this thing that we're doing, it costs quite a bit of money, I'm like, let's do it. Because I don't care about money, so, but like for her, that's kind of her job with the business is to pay attention to all the money, and pay
Yeah.
attention to it. What's it being allocated for, and what are we using it for, and are we getting the most out of it? Are we going to get a nice return, from it? I like to just kind of like go and just like try stuff. I like, even we did an advertisement on Joe Rogan's podcast at one point, and I believe it was like, I think it was like 50K, but I was just to do one ad. But I knew that we'd get our money back, So I knew it's like, hey, it's just like loaning somebody money for a minute, and they give it right back. And she's like, it doesn't work that way. It's not that simple. I'm like, I think it will work out well, and it worked out fine. But like, I'm the one who's kind of always like, yeah, let's do it. Whatever it is, like I'm pretty much down to do it. And then she's she thinks about it more factual. She's trying to like, be more reasonable
She
about
almost
it.
like runs it through the mill, figures out whether like this is something that's justifiable and what the processes are. It's like you're the one that's just ideas into the funnel, and then that kind of drip feeds down, and then she's like, right, I'm going to take care of all of this bullshit which you actually need to run the business.
100%.
But it's really interesting, isn't it? Because again, it plays into I don't know if you like listen to Gary Vee or know much about that, but kind of like his whole concept of like, stop trying to take your time to learn and get better at the shit that you're bad at, and find other people that are great at that. And I think for you, obviously, this is perfect because it's your other half, so you're around them every day. But for people that are listening in, like whether that's business partners or someone else, like don't feel like you need to take the time to go, okay, right, now I need to stop worrying about all of these ideas and try and figure out the process. It's like, okay, no, keep on doing your shit and just find someone else to do all the stuff that you're not good at. And obviously that dynamic has just probably kind of grown and materialized over the years.
Some of it reminds me a little bit of like cooking, like where you cook something and you're like, oh, that was pretty good. And then the next time you go to cook that same thing, you're like, oh, I wonder if I added like cheese to this, or if I wonder if I added this to that, like it might be a little bit better. And then so you try it and you're like, it didn't work. But then you try it, next time you add something different to it because you thought about it from last time, because you learned that it wasn't that good the way you made it the previous time. And each time you're able to like make it, fit your taste better, fit your taste buds better. And then I think business is the same way. Like, don't ever wait for anything. Like, start to sprinkle that garlic on right away. Just get that salt on there right away and just try it. Was it, you added salt and now it's too salty? That's okay. Next time, just don't put that much salt on, And I think it's important to put, people should know this about businesses. I mean, they put products out, and a lot of times as a consumer, you're scratching your head. You're like, I can't even believe they put this out. This thing's crap. Well, they put it out because they already know that it's crap, but they have a second edition that they're working on at the moment, and they're going to work on, like people that are like into video games, like every year, for some of these video games, especially the sports video games, every year they insert like a couple extra things to make it better than it was previous year, right?
Yeah.
And they could probably just input whatever they want into it, in year one, but they don't. But then there's a lot of kinks to work out and stuff too, though. Every time you make or create stuff, we've had a lot of knee sleeves and stuff. We've had things rip. We've had all kinds of issues, but all of those problems are always really good. Like we had a type of knee sleeve that we had for a while, just the way that it was stitched. it wasn't always lined up 100% at the factory where they were manufacturing it, and so it wasn't always completely sewn together. But we couldn't tell when we would test them, when we would pull on them, they were okay. But once someone wore them like 10, 15 times, they would start to come like unraveled or unstitched. And it wasn't all of them, but it was a good majority of them. And at first, I'm losing my mind because I'm like, we can't have this. We have quality check, like we're paying attention to this. We pay good money for these products, and now the people are frustrated with us. But then I realized it's just an opportunity to get closer to the customer because the customer is really pissed. But that customer that's really mad, the second you make things right, they are so pumped and they tell everybody about it. So, they're like, they'll what they'll do at first is they'll post a picture of the sleeve ripped. And they'll be like, "Fuck you, Mark Bell, your products are junk," And then I would see that screen captured or something, and then we would talk about how to handle these things, as a company. And the best thing is to communicate with that person. It's great if we can get them on the phone. I would even a lot of times call people, and they'd be like, "No, this is Mark Bell," and I'm like, "Yeah, man, I'm sorry. Like I sent you. You're right. The thing's a piece of shit." And we're working on it. We're working on making things better over here. But I want to send you, an autographed slingshot and a book or something like that. Just whatever way, even ask them, hey, how do I make this right in your eyes? Because I know that we sold your product. You thought it was going to work a certain way, and it's not doing that. So I want to clear that up.
Yeah, and I think again, it's so interesting with a lot of these businesses, especially as they grow. I think they begin to lose sight and lose track and lose touch with their customers, with what their original ideal was, the reason they started out, etc., etc. Now, as someone that is in this industry, I'm really interested to kind of find out, how do you keep yourself grounded? How do you keep yourself focused on like the bigger general picture? Obviously, you're creating some incredible products out there, and you're always looking to innovate. You're always looking to adapt. So, is it a case of that you're taking suggestions from people within the industry? You're just listening to what they're saying? Are you kind of getting direct feedback on products? Is a lot of your stuff just you testing stuff out and going, okay, what would I want more of as an athlete? What would I want less of as an athlete? How does that process work?
Pretty much every single thing that we currently have at Slingshot has come directly from me. Like logos, I mean this logo, the strong logo here, the power logo, the Slingshot logo itself, the Slingshot itself, all the knee sleeves, knee wraps. I mean, pretty much everything. Um, where things really come into play is like sometimes the naming of stuff, and sometimes like sometimes to make a product a little bit better. That's where a lot of the role of the other people will come in, like the staff. But a lot of that was I would have to say a lot of that was me in the beginning stages being very protective of what I was creating, So for example, like I don't read, like, and one of the reasons why I don't read is like I don't want to read anybody else's story. I feel like I'm too busy creating my own, and so like when it comes to like showing somebody something, it was very personal to me, and I know that having their advice would be helpful because it can make the product better. However, I didn't want it to skew my creativity. So I didn't want to like show somebody something and say like, "Hey, dude, like check out this new knee sleeve. What do you think of it?" Like if it wasn't far enough along, then obviously they would have a lot of criticism. But I already know that because it's like not fully developed, right? But if I show you, I'll use like a gangster knee sleeve as an example. So we make knee sleeves that are called gangster knee sleeves, and
Oh
the
yeah.
gangster sleeves, they're 9 millimeters. They're super super thick, right? So if I just told you about a gangster knee sleeve, hey, I got this idea. We make the gangster wraps. Now we're going to make the gangster knee sleeve, and it's going to be really really thick. You might be like, well, my knee sleeves work pretty good as it is. What's really going to be the difference, But if I show it to you and say, hey, look at this thing, and it looks good, aesthetically it looks nice. Say, dude, put this on. It takes you a little while to put it on because they're they're so damn thick and strong and stuff. You put them on, you do a squat workout, and you go, holy shit, like that. That's kind of why I kept a lot of stuff, to myself, and that's how I continued to bring products to the market and stuff like that. And now though it works quite a bit differently. I ask my staff, you know, what ingenuity, what creativity can you bring to the table? Because I would love your input on these things. I'd love to be able to, and then we also try to figure out like ways to reward them for that too. Like you're going to get recognized as like being part of this. Like we'll make sure from a financial perspective that you get taken care of because this
Wow.
is your idea or you're part of it.
That's dope, man. I love that.
Yeah, so you're trying to really, utilize, more people's brains than just one, and that has really been helpful in the last couple of months, especially because of the quarantine. So I'm like, what can we do? What can we do? And everyone's like, well, maybe we can make some stuff that people can use at home, or maybe we can just advertise that the Sling Shot can be used at home and the hip circle will be used at home and things like that. And so we've done a couple things where we've put some stuff on sale as a combination pack, things that you can have at home. We also did I think it's on my website right now. We did it's called Beat the Boredom Pack, and it has like it's got cards, like playing some cards. It's got it has a puzzle of me. I think there might be like a jump rope in there and stuff like that. So yeah, just like, and then, it's all just like stuff of like what's going on in the world right now. What are people doing at the moment? We made a shirt that said quarantine strong and quarantine's like slashed out. Just simple stuff like that. And then when it comes to the actual like industry and getting the pulse of the industry and trying to figure out what people want, I would say that it's pretty cool to put stuff out and then to see other companies copy it. That's a
Which has
good sign.
happened a lot, right?
Yeah, that's actually a really good sign that you made a product, not only that everybody wants, but you made a product that other companies are recognized. Hey, that's actually like some easy money for me. I can make that as well. And I never really view it as I don't care what other companies do. I
It's the
just try to
highest form of
focus in.
flattery, right?
Yeah, I just focus in on what we're doing. But yeah, it is kind of a tough thing. Like, what's going to be the next thing that we can create that really moves the needle, that really provides value for people? And that's kind of hard because you don't want to bullshit people and you don't want to get into making like weird products, and stuff like that. And
And
so
making shit for the sake of making shit. It's like you want to make
yeah,
stuff that's going to be utilized and is going to be, well respected. And it's like everyone wants to be that person that wants to make that item that is 100% necessary in everyone's kit bag. Everyone wants to make that one piece of kit that you're like, oh, bro, have you got this yet? Oh no, I haven't tried it. Yeah. Oh man, it's life changing. You got to put this on. Try this. It's like that's what everyone's heading towards, right? That's what we all want.
and a lot of that stuff is usually like super simple, like what's something that everyone needs? It's like, okay, well, everyone needs chalk. And it's like, well, chalk's not that exciting though, like, so you're trying to think of like, and the truth is, and we know this is like, you don't really need anything, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
people were lifting in the 70s and they were jacked as fuck, right? Like Bill Kazmaier and those guys, like they looked great. I mean, they ate a lot of food, probably took a little extra stuff here and there, and they trained really hard, and they were just they looked great and they were super strong. So, I think that's also an important message to share with people. Like at the moment, I'm actually getting into making some supplements, and
Sweet.
what it's important for people to understand. Like you don't really need supplements. You don't need a slingshot. You don't need wrist wraps. It may for you personally, it may make the job feel a little easier. It may make you feel a little bit better about the job that you're about to do. I kind of think of elbow sleeves and knee sleeves and things like that a little bit as like a uniform, like football player has like certain uniform they put on to go do their stuff, and that's the way powerlifting was viewed years ago when the powerlifting equipment was in there with squat suits and the bench shirts and stuff. It wasn't viewed as cheating. It was viewed as like, this is my squat suit, just like you wear a business suit to a business meeting, right? it wasn't any different than that. And yeah, it gave you some support, but it also kept you alive. It kept you in the sport for a longer period of time. And I think that might be why guys like Matt Wenning and guys like myself um, are able to still and Chris Duffin are able to still go after it and are able to still be, again, fully capable. All three of us can come out of retirement and continue to compete. And I think a lot of that had to do with having that supportive gear for so many years. I think that was helpful.
Yeah, massively so. And I think that brings it around perfectly. I end the podcast the same way. Everyone gets the same question, and I'm interested to hear what you might say. So, for a second, I want you to imagine that you're stepping into a time machine. You're traveling back in time and you get to visit your younger self. You spend a few minutes with them, 10, 11, 12 years of age, got your whole life ahead of you, and you're very impressionable at that age. You get to spend a few moments there, imparting a form of wisdom, knowledge, a mantra, a way to live your life, something to help your younger self get through all of the bullshit that that you have ahead of yourself to come to get to where you are today. What do you give them?
Yeah, I would just say if I could give myself, my younger self, or give people anything, it would be, knowledge, because I think that again, the ability to solve problems is where all happiness and all success comes from. I'm a big believer in that. So, I mean, anyone listening to this podcast, you can even challenge that. I would like you to kind of think about the different problems that you have in your life, and if they got solved, what would you be? You would most likely be pretty pumped. You'd most likely be pretty happy, right? And then the only way that we solve problems is through correcting errors and correcting the problems that we've had previously, or correcting the mistakes that we made previously. And that's the only way that the knowledge is created in the first place. So you do have to fail. It's not like you can't like go back and tell your younger self not to mess up. You can't give yourself, like, I think this is an interesting thing. Like, if there was a pill, if I could give you a pill and I said, Matt, this is going to take away all your problems. Like, I hope that you're smart enough to be super reluctant
Yeah,
to
fuck
take,
that.
yeah, right, because you need problems in order to learn. You don't need necessarily heartache, and you don't necessarily need to go through like really rough times for things to work out well
Yeah.
for you. I think it's a little bit of a misconception, but you do have to fuck up. You have to
Yeah, you
mess
got to
up.
get slapped in the face a little bit.
And so, as much as I would love to, have given myself more knowledge, I think it was important that I did mess up, but it was also important that I learned from all those mistakes. So I think that would be kind of the main thing that I would share with younger people is, like, you're going to mess up, you're going to make mistakes. Please just continue to learn from those mistakes, and also understand that there's a massive difference between continuing to gain knowledge and going to school. And there's a massive difference between education, educating yourself. Self-education is dominant. Self-education will beat the crap out of any organized education that there will ever be, because what you have gone and seeked out for yourself through strongman training far exceeds anything that you were forced to learn in school.
It's all in there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because it's an area of interest to you. It's something you identify with. It's something other people identify you as, right? And so it really it's not hard, right? And that's another thing, is I think people think, oh man, it's all about hard work. And yes, you do have to work often. You do have to work a lot, but the work isn't really that hard because you're so interested in it anyway. Yes, it can bust your balls, and yes, it can be tough, and yes,
Training, yeah.
intensity levels kind of hard, and every once in a while you're like, yeah, that's gonna be a real motherfucker of a workout. But for the most part, it's not really. It would be harder. I say this quite a bit. It'd be harder for you and I to go to the library. Like, we don't want we don't want to go to the library. Like, we don't want to study.
Oh fuck!
Yeah.
The sight of us two walking through the local library, just trying to pick out things to read. Oh, that would be incredible.
Yeah. We don't want to study or read. We want to lift. Like, this is what we're interested in. So I think those would be, those would be some of the things I would share. And one of my favorite things is this too, is that, the only thing that we have control over, the only thing we have rule over is the way that we think about things, the way that we interpret stuff, and I think that's really important. I know people say that quite a bit, but you can think that about anything. You could think that about the quarantine. You could think that about cancer. You can think that, I mean, I've seen people do it. I've seen close friends have, one of my good friends, his daughter had leukemia, and at first, it hit the family like a ton of bricks, and then my friend's wife said, she goes, listen, anytime anyone comes to this hospital, we do not cry. And it's like, well, wait, are we going to turn into robots? How do we not cry? This young, 6-year-old girl, 7-year-old girl has leukemia, how do we not cry? She's losing her hair, how do we not cry, and type of thing. Well, so what she said was, she said, if you're going to cry, do it outside of the hospital. When we're in here, we're going to stay strong, we're going to stay positive, and we're going to make sure that Ava sees that we're excited to see her every day, and that we're not interpreting this as some sort of imminent doom. We're not perceiving this as the end. We're perceiving this as a process that she has to go through. She needs X amount of treatment. So you can take facts and you can implement them from any situation, no matter how problematic it is, and you can start to kind of unwind it a little bit, and you can just relax a little bit. Even with what's going on right now, even with this pandemic, yes, it has killed a lot of people, but let's face it, it's not nearly as dangerous as we originally thought. It was a good idea to shut things down for a while, but now it's time for people to fucking get back to work. It's time for the healthy people to come back out. And I mean, if you're just taking in the facts, again, I know it's dangerous. I know it's killed a lot of people, and I'm not going to downplay that. But if you take in the facts, then you can say, okay, well, it probably makes sense for a lot of us to get back to work so we don't continue to kill the economy, so people's minds aren't screwed up, so people don't want to kill themselves and things of that nature, and we start to open things back up again. But yeah, you can reinterpret just about anything. The worst thing that's ever happened to you, you can work on. You can work on having a reinterpret. I mean, even death. Look at how people are so scared of dying, right? But then, how many people do you know, or how many times have you seen somebody say that they've died before? Like they're like I was on my deathbed. But then, what does it do? It advances their life. It makes their life better. So, like, we don't know anything about death. There's a saying that says people don't know anything about death because they haven't done it yet. But like, some of these people that have experienced death or had near-death experiences, I've never really heard anybody say, like, my life was fucked ever since that day, that I got in that car accident, I nearly died. They usually talk about it as if it's like the best thing that ever happened to them. So I think that a lot of times we don't even know what we're fearing. We don't even know what we're scared of.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of things that it's just about where you stand. It's just about the perspective. It's just about what light is being cast on the issue and where the shadow is and where you are in relation to that. And I think, if you sometimes it takes you a couple of weeks, a couple of months. Sometimes it might be several years later, but you'll look back and you'll go, fuck, right. Yeah, that had to happen in order for me to do this, or to think that this way, or be put in that position, or have that done to me, and then that shapes you as a human being. I completely agree with you, and man, it's a beautiful way to end the podcast. That was absolutely excellent, man. Thank you so much for coming on board. It's been an absolute pleasure, and yeah, I mean, there's a million and one things that we could talk about, so I'd love to have you back on at some point, man.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Hopefully you're just thinking of this as part one here.
Oh hell yeah, exactly, 100%.